Here's a video I've been wanting to make for a while, discussing what is the best age to take psychedelics at, and also it's going to be sort of like a public service announcement to my audience, because I know that a lot of people who watch me are below the age of 25, even below the age of 18. A lot of the people I talk to on Instagram are actually like 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are just getting into psychedelics, and oftentimes I do tell them the main piece of advice is that I think you might be a bit too young to be taking psychedelics, especially at age 14. I'd say that's ridiculously young to be taking them at. Obviously no judgment at all, people are just on their own unique life paths. You might end up experimenting at an earlier age. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but you should know that I think you really do need to be careful. At that age, 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18, at that age you can get seriously lost in psychedelics and sort of the hardcore spirituality that comes with the field, and you can neglect to handle the basic personal development issues that you need to sort of tackle at that age. I know I made the same mistake. I didn't actually start experimenting with psychedelics until I was like 17, 18, which even then for me I think that was again too young. Obviously everything's turned out alright in the end, but if I could go back and do it ideally, because that's really what I'm talking about here, is it's just my advice, what is the ideal age to take them at. Obviously for everyone it's going to be very different, but ideally I think you should be holding off till you're at least 25 plus. Psychedelics and hardcore spirituality can be very distracting to your basic foundational development if you do them regularly, especially the powerful ones like DMT, 5-MeO, and even if you're taking high doses of anything like shrooms and LSD, it can get seriously metaphysical. And your brain at that age, your prefrontal cortex, I don't believe, is actually fully developed till you're in your 20s. And using any psychoactive substance can sort of tamper with the evolution of the prefrontal cortex, and just generally your process of maturing into a wiser adult can be thrown off course by using all these psychoactive substances, because at the end of the day they're so unbelievably foreign to your normal waking consciousness, sober state of reality, that you can get sucked down the rabbit hole, and especially if you start tripping regularly, it become a big distraction from sorting out the foundational aspects of your life, which, to be honest, I really feel like, ideally, not going to work for everyone, but I'd say for me and for a lot of people this would be the best course of action. The first sort of half of your life should be based upon pursuing sort of like material pursuits, and I mean this in like the most healthy way, not in the most like hedonistic, negative, consumptive manner, but focusing on, say, your career, your life purpose, your finances. What do you want to do with your life? What sort of person do you want to be? Experiencing new things. Obviously, I'd say healthily you could experiment with psychedelics, but you have to have that consciousness and the awareness to not get too sucked in. And because they're so profound and so awe-inspiring, it can be very easy for, say, the immature mind to get hooked on this sort of stuff. And I have spoken to a lot of people on my Instagram, and they're all absolutely amazing people, but they're all like, say, in high school and stuff, and I think that is going to have a detrimental effect for a lot of you. Everyone at that age, everybody age 15 thinks, I've got it all figured out, man, I'm the most mature person ever. I mean, I was like that. Everyone's like that pretty much for the most part. And the fact of the matter is that you really don't understand what's going on with life, reality, your mind, where you're going, what you want really, and you just really need to take some time out to contemplate deeply and just focusing on exploring new hobbies, things you're already passionate about, your finances, what you want to do with your sort of the trajectory of your life. Do you want to go for education? Do you want to take up a trade? Do you want to go to university? Also exploring socialization, relationships, even just like normal friendships, romantic relationships, all different variations of these. These are things you're best experimenting with and exploring in your youth when you have the most energy, because again, at the end of the day, as you get older, you're going to have less energy, less drive to do these sort of things, and in that sort of period of life, in the later half, after you've burnt through your karma in your youth, you probably at a better age to get stuck into hardcore spirituality once you've got the foundations of your life set. Because say, hypothetically, if you're in your 40s, 50s, and you're still absolutely hardcore into spirituality, but you're suffering in your finances, you don't have a house, or you've not burnt through sort of material desires, which we all do have. We all have these animalistic desires, and it's healthy to work through them. It's part of like confronting your shadow and integrating it. So that is best done when you're at a young age, when you have the energy and you have the drive to do that. And if you suppress that, it can become quite toxic later on in life, especially when you've just spent your whole life just fucking eating bare tabs of acid. That's gonna seriously mess up the trajectory of your life. And yeah, you need to consider that and how that fits into your whole life plan, because psychedelics and spirituality can't just be the focal point. Obviously for some people it can, like these hardcore monks who just sit in like a cave all day and stare at the wall and that's very unique for them. That's not something that very much is common in the West. Some of you might actually be on course to do that. Maybe that is really what your life purpose is about, but oftentimes you do have to sort of be realistic with yourself and think, where am I growing up at in the world? What sort of culture have I been brought up into? What sort of person am I really? Oftentimes people in the youth think that, oh yeah, I can just take psychedelics and they give me all the answers, but this is actually not the case for many people. It can work out in the end. You can always, say if you go off track, you can always sort yourself out. Say if right now you are quite young and you have got quite stuck into this pursuit, you can actually just take a step back, and if you feel that things aren't going well for you and you feel like your use of psychoactive substances isn't helping you and it's sort of expanding your consciousness too much, you can always just take a step back and go off them for a few years, because at the end of the day, I'm saying you've got your whole life to do these things. That's why I always advocate people doing this stuff slow and steady. But I know that I understand what it's like to be a youth. You do just want to do things like fast as possible. You don't have as much patience, and again, there's absolutely no judgment. That's just part and parcel of being young. You just want to get stuck into everything and do everything at once. But yeah, sometimes you've got to just see the bigger picture and sort of rein in your desire to do these things as fast as possible, and just take a few years off to just do other things like travelling, exploring other avenues of life. Because realistically, say if you're a person who really wants to, I don't know, have romantic relationships and experience intimacy, if you've never really done that before, doing psychedelics all the time can really just sort of throw that off balance. Because again, if you're just seeing stuff as like, oh my god, everything's an illusion, like you're just going to get stuck into that. And that's going to probably impede your socialization, because I know a lot of people say who take psychedelics and are into this sort of stuff are actually like very introverted, and they value the time spent with their own consciousness, quote unquote, rather than exploring people with exploring other consciousnesses out there, or other egos, if you want to say that. And yeah, you can get really stuck on just being by yourself all the time, and then that's going to sort of retard, in the most appropriate way of saying that word, retard your ability to socialise with other people. You're not going to be able to, say, for males, you're not going to be able to attract females, and for maybe, I don't know, girls, you're not going to be able to understand like the male mind, and vice versa. And even just general socialisation, like you might have that extroverted sort of karmic backlog that you need to work on, that you've been suppressing, because yeah, a lot of even the other side, say like extroverts, might struggle being by themselves all the time, and yeah, that you can get addicted to socializing and using substances in a recreational fashion. So there's two sides of the same coin, and they both sort of cross over. But specifically when we're talking about psychedelics, yeah, my personal opinion would be best wait till you're like at least 18. Even so, a lot of people won't be fully developed by then, but I'd say at least hold off until getting into them a bit more seriously by then. And even then, if you do start doing that, take it slowly until, say, you're like 25, when you could proper get stuck in, because by that age you probably have figured out sort of what you want to do. Ideally, obviously, it's no worries if you haven't, because again, we're all on our different path. And yeah, I'm not advising you to not do psychedelics at a young age, because I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying if you do decide to disregard this advice at the age of sort of the high school age, and if you do really think that this is the best thing for you, I can't stop you at all. I'm just trying to say that, again, patience is a virtue, seriously. And it's not that one trip will just ruin your life, but if you do get sucked into this too deeply and start tripping regularly all the time, you are going to get distracted, and your focus is going to move away from sort of, again, the basic human needs, which is, no matter whether you like it or not, no matter what your perspective is on life, if we're spiritual beings having a human experience, blah blah blah, at the end of the day, right now, for the most of your life, you are going to be in the sober state, and you are going to be like wrapped up in human bullshit, if you want to call it. And at the end of the day, you do just have to bite the bullet and focus on these parts of your life, or else you are going to suffer, and it's going to be hard, especially if you're just so caught into if you conscious, because at the end of the day, if you keep taking psychedelics, they are going to sort of rewire your consciousness, and you're going to become less human in a sense, especially in comparison to sort of like normies. But and that's going to make you feel very alienated, and could bring about some like depersonalization, derealization experiences. I've met many people back when I was sort of like 15, 16, 17, who were sort of like quite narcissistic and had sort of these crazy like god complexes and emotional issues that were majorly exacerbated by doing shit tons of psychedelics. And obviously they were none the wiser. They thought it was amplifying their consciousness, when actually it was just turning them into like the densest ego known to man. And they were also extreme nihilists, and really sort of started to affect other people, and they'd just do psychedelics just for a kick or a nice high, but manipulating themselves into thinking that they were doing it to sort of explore spirituality and become higher beings, when actually they were just becoming lower forms of consciousness and becoming quite toxic. Those people who are like that, if you know you have these emotional issues, you need to treat psychedelics, especially something like DMT and LSD, as these loaded guns, and know what your reasons are for taking them, and have the right framework to interpret them. And sometimes you just got to take a step back and admit that, oh yeah, I don't think I am actually probably not mature enough to do this like seriously extreme stuff. Obviously there's nothing wrong with using them recreationally at that age, but again, you just do have to be careful, because you can easily get out of hand. I mean, let's be honest, fellow UK listeners, how many people just ended up getting on it in fields at like 15, 16, 17 when they're in high school doing all this mad stuff? And even today I'd say it's even probably worse with like the proper young Gen Z heads. I've heard loads of stories of like people from around where I live, like they're going to school and they're getting on it in classrooms, they're getting on MDMA in like physics class, and getting on it in the toilets, and then dealing drugs in PE lessons. It is getting like a serious problem, and there's no education and awareness around this stuff. People are just like, oh well, it's just part of being a youth, which yeah, it is, but you also just have to guide them and give them some sort of some tips on how to do this safely. You can't just let them do it. You get obviously don't demonize them for doing it, but also don't just let them do it to the heart's content, because they will just get sucked into it, because it's so profound and so awe-inspiring that it is going to just take them off course from what they really need to be doing at that age. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, you're taking a very conservative stance on this, but you do have to sort of combine the balance of like the liberal attitude towards it and a conservative attitude, at least in my opinion. You've got to have the healthy aspects of both when it comes to sorting out your life on a foundational, material, just basic level. But ultimately, it is your choice though. And I know a lot of people say some people just are wired up differently when they're young. Maybe it is possible for maybe taking psychedelics at that age, doing them very, very wisely, and feeling as if you are matured physically and mentally. But let's just say that a low percentage of you have just like somehow like neurologically developed at the age of like 16, 17, 18. You're completely mature. You've got all these grounding practices like self-inquiry and meditation. Maybe psychedelics really will be great for you to enhance your passions, help you understand what you want out of life more, develop a life purpose, and just also get that great taste of spirituality and that taste of sort of ego dissolution that allows you to be a purer person and just a better, more loving individual. However, just being realistic and seeing things from my perspective through my life experiences and just everything I've understood, I would just say that you'd probably best doing it around 20, 25 when your prefrontal cortex is developed, so that you don't mess up your neurological development. I'd also advise you to educate yourself with mystical traditions, non-duality and philosophy, because obviously at some point with your psychedelic use you are going to get deep down the rabbit hole, and it's going to get very metaphysical, very loopy, paradoxical, and it's going to warp your whole ideas of reality and break the paradigm of like materialism if you do get into it seriously. So yeah, you got to familiarise yourself with that. That really helps. I'd say be firmly aware of like how your ego works and your ego development. You got to like deal with all these emotional hang-ups you've got, because again, if you're not mentally stable going into psychedelics, you can end up manifesting demons and other demonic shit, like going to hell realms and stuff, because at the end of the day, yeah, what a psychedelic's going to do, they're going to bring about your shadow, your subconscious, and sort of reflect yourself back at you. And if you're in denial of that, that's going to be the way that it sort of wakes you up, and it can be very painful, very traumatic. So yeah, people, I mean, it's even worse today in like our society, isn't it? Probably like people are having anxiety attacks, depressive episodes, people eat unhealthily, we don't exercise, we're not mindful, and we're lazy. And this is just, there's again no judgment for this. This is just a condition of being human, say, especially even more so in today's world, where say like the TikTokification of everything has destroyed people's concentration, their attention span. And people just don't want to face up to themselves as much anymore. And psychedelics can be helpful with that, but if you're getting stuck into them when you're in the midst of all this stuff and you don't even understand it, like you're an anxious, depressed person, and you just think, oh, I'll take these psychedelics, they'll sort me out, you're going to have a bad time. Yeah. So another big thing, obviously, what I've gone over quite a lot in this video is, yeah, the basic survival, have that dealt with in a sustainable and conscious manner. Get yourself financially supported without being anxious about money or what you're going to do with your life, because again, that can be a major source of suffering that's just going to build up. Have all these healthy and fulfilling relationships established, because otherwise, if you don't really, obviously this is just a generalization, some people don't need this at all, but I'd say for a lot of people, we do desire these intimate relationships, platonic or romantic. And if you don't get them fulfilled before you start getting into hardcore spirituality, you are going to neglect that aspect of your life, which is going to bring a lot of hang-ups and possibly a lot of suffering later on when, I mean, do you really want to get to like 40, 50 and being like, oh wow, I'm still like a virgin with no mates? Which, yeah, for some people might not be asked about that, but I think for most of you, you're going to be pretty bothered if you haven't explored that area of your life. Health-wise, eating as healthy as you can, exercising, because this also helps to clear your mind, clear your body, purify you in a sense, which will benefit your psychedelic use majorly. It's going to have a knock-on effect in the best possible way, because another thing that psychedelics can reveal to yourself is sort of your unhealthy habits. And if you're some binge eating like ice cream addict who does the most exercise in a day, going from the fridge to the bedroom, that's probably going to mess you up big time, I imagine, and it's going to reveal that to you. And again, that can be quite traumatic, and especially if you don't want to fess up to that, because you can be so deep into that sort of addiction that when the psychedelics reveal it to you, like, no, don't show me it, please. And then that's going to cause major suffering, and you probably might even have like ego backlash where you get even worse into your addiction, which can very much happen when psychedelics show you the truth of your reality and your mind. Instead of working through it, which obviously you should be doing, and integrating it, oftentimes what can happen, I know it's happened for me, you can go into ego backlash mode, where basically you just get stuck even worse into your bad habits and that, because your ego is constantly trying to just like tether you to sort of like this homeostasis reality where nothing's changing, and it's just, there's no development happening, it's just in its comfort zone, which is also, even though it's comfortable, it's actually very toxic. So yeah, health-wise, just get that all sorted out, and make sure you're not on any medications that could interfere with psychedelics if you're going through, say, like antidepressants and that. Try and just get through the basic foundations of therapy first, before you get stuck into it. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, it's all very subjective. If you want to do psychedelics but have absolutely nothing of meaning that you want to change, then you are really just chasing the experiencing. What the fuck am I on about? You're chasing this high, this experience, this altered state, and you're sort of just making it up as you go along, going through the motions, when you do need to have a healthy sense of consciousness and awareness of why you're doing this and what you want out of it. So yeah, your ability to draw from benefit from psychedelics will depend on how developed and spiritually evolved you are in general, because if you're not properly developed, then psychedelics are going to probably make your life a lot worse. And you've got to have that mental balance and ability to observe your mind with the detachment that could actually end up saving you from a bad trip. Because if your mind starts resisting, things can get ugly, and especially when you're young, dumb, full of cum, a lot of the time you can have a sense of hubris and arrogance around stuff like this about, oh, I don't need to sort myself out, I can just do these things and it'll work out for the best. And this can really be alleviated doing it at a wiser, more mature age. There's no need to get impatient and compulsive about psychedelics and spirituality, because all that hastiness and desperateness will do is make you end up going down a lot of dark paths and doing a lot of stupid things in your life that you don't realise that you're actually doing. Other stuff like yoga and meditation, yeah, this will minimise the damage caused from psychedelics to your mind, because you're going to be more grounded, and it'll ensure you don't get sort of outdone too much from putting all your energy into this, because it's a massive energy deposit doing psychedelics. There's a lot of intense stuff that comes from this. Yeah, I'd say that you need to also have a clean mind. Don't consume a lot of like bullshit, because so much bullshit on the internet, on TV, and be mindful of what you're consuming and putting into your brain. You'll be surprised at how much bullshit you can actually consume in your unconscious mind, and how diluted your consciousness can become. Yeah, and lastly, you probably just need to understand what you really want from life and why you're doing psychedelics in the first place. And if you do decide that I am ready to do this very young, because at the end of the day I can't stop you at all, I can only advise you, and I would advise you to just be patient and just learn about it without doing it too much. 1 or 2 sessions, maybe a year, that'd be sound, but just don't get overboard with it, because I've spoken to so many people who are like, hey Vivec, I've just taken like fucking 7 tabs of acid before school, and now I'm in detention, and I'm completely losing focus in my life. And it's like, well, what did you really think would happen? I know that sounds judgy, but it's like, that's the best thing you can say. Like, what did you really think was going to happen? And sometimes you got to give a bit of tough love to make people realise this. And thankfully, all the people who I've sort of spoken to in that vein have been very understanding and been like, oh yeah, maybe it isn't the best time for me to be doing this stuff. Maybe I should just learn about it, just research about it, just do the theory rather than the practice, because the practice is where everything comes to fruition, isn't it, really? And it can be very, very intense. So yeah, just keep your thinking caps on, lads. Just realise, what do you want from this? Is it excitement and cool experiences? Do you want to improve your life? Or do you have no idea whatsoever? So if improvement of your life is what you're after, I think there's a lot of better things you can be doing at that age that are safer and more systematic ways of developing yourself, rather than just jumping into the hardcore psychedelic side of things, because it can really backfire on you, and it definitely did for me. And I finally, to this day, realised why that was, and it was, again, the hubris that I had, and the arrogance, and I'll just take all these things and end up sorting me out, and having this altered state will just somehow fix my normal state. And it's like, nah mate, it does not work like that at all. But for some people it might do. So yeah, I'm just going back and forth now. But yeah, only you really know what's best for you at the end of the day. I can tell you all this stuff and advise you, and I do think this is a healthy piece of advice. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're going to do whatever you want to do. So just remember that it's a fucking loaded gun, mate, and do you want to play with that or not? And if you do want to play with that, then just know that maybe it might end up firing back off in your face one day. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, especially the youngsters amongst us. Just remember, be safe and be smart, and fucking stay in school, because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, you do need to get a bit of education down here. It's fucking annoying, it's shit, but yeah, it's just the human reality we live in right now. What can we really do about it? Just got to accept it and bite the bullet. And the biggest bullet that you need to bite is that psychedelics can be a loaded gun, and if you're not careful with them, they'll fucking fire back in your face, my lad. So yeah, just keep your thinking caps on and be wise about it. So yep, see you later guys, and just wanted to say that I probably won't be making many videos in the next week. I'm experiencing a bit of YouTuber burnout. Probably should have said this at the beginning, but yeah, I'm not very happy with the quality of my content right now. I need to just make more interesting videos. Trip reports are great, and I do put my all into them. Try to make them the best I can, but it's just not satisfying me creatively right now, and I'm gonna get stuck into that big video I was talking about, which is trip report related, but I'm just gonna take maybe like a week off from doing trip reports every other few days to focus on that and get that out in the next few weeks. And also a big trip report video that I've got in the works as well. That's a collaboration between me, one of my artists, my mate Keith, and a person who does trippy visuals. So that'll be coming out as well. So yeah, I just want to spend more time making longer, more in-depth, just more engaging content that takes me a lot longer to create, and I can get more, a lot more wild about it and just get a bit more stuck into the creative aspect. So yeah, whatever, ramble over, and I'll see you whenever I see you.